this light load, why don't you go ahead and call roll just to get a check for who's here from the committee?
You bet. I'll start with you as vice chair. Don Knorr.
Here.
Here. Robert Burke.
Here.
Gayathri Dina Karen. Not here. Carrie Schaffner.
Here.
Carl Stumpf.
Here.
And Susan West. Not here. So we do have 4. We do have a quorum, and we could start if you'd like.
Sure. Let's go ahead. First item on the agenda, minutes of the 8/9/2021 meeting. I was not in attendance, so I will probably abstain, but is there any discussion or motion to approve?
This is Robert Burke. I would make a motion to approve the minutes from 8/9/2021.
This is Carrie Schaffner. I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Well, sorry, abstain. So I don't know. Does 3 count, Sean? Will that make it?
It just has to be a majority of voting members present. So
Okay.
3-0
good.
is okay.
All right.
301, I'll write down.
Okay. All right, item 2 on the agenda, the Bell Farm concept review. Well, Sean, I'm going to let you take the lead on this initially. You can
Sure.
pass it off from there.
You bet. Kathleen is here representing the developer, and Bruce is here as her civil engineer. And so let me just hop to the most recent concept drawing. So there was discussion with the committee on July 12th, where the Bellefontaine Boulevard concept was for a one-way pair going around the park, you'll recall. And the direction from the committee was in part to try to push Bellefontaine Boulevard to one side of the park or the other. And I think there was a preference for the north side. So that in part is what's shown here. I don't have a cross section with this particular drawing, but it does show some radii of pretty much all, I think it was 250 feet, if that's, or 200 feet. Was that right, Bruce?
Yeah, 200.
Centerline radius, okay. Which has, as is noted, a 25-mile-an-hour intended design speed. It shows a 66-foot right-of-way. I just don't know exactly what's in that right-of-way, other than it probably would be city standard for a residential street.
That's what it is.
Okay. And we'd have to figure out later, I guess, how that ties into the rest of Bellefontaine through the Misty Valley subdivision and exits out to Parmenter Street. But at this point, I think we just want to focus discussion on Bellefontaine Boulevard through the subdivision to figure out how that lays out and how everything else lays out. Part of what the committee talked with me last time about was touching base with the Greater Madison Metropolitan Planning Organization, the MPO, in terms of getting an updated traffic demand model figure so that we could see what kind of traffic is intended or expected to use this corridor as a reliever to Century Avenue and County Highway K, which is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan that was just recently approved by the Common Council, that considers this sort of a regional collector, I think it's called in the report. Those are both a little bit nebulous as terms go. They don't pinpoint exactly what that means, but in a general sense, it's intended that this corridor serve a fair degree of mobility in preference to high degree of access, if that makes sense. So it doesn't confer any particular cross-section or design. It just confers sort of a use someplace on the continuum of mobility and access. Some roads like freeways are very high mobility, extremely limited access. local roads are just the other way around. The preference is for high degree of access, and mobility is a secondary concern at best. And collectors are generally someplace in the middle. There is access, but it may be pretty limited, and the mobility can fluctuate a little bit depending on how much traffic's intended to use it. So that's why the committee had asked me to touch base with MPO staff. As an update, I did hear from MPO staff today in an email that they just recently got the updated model, and so they are beginning this work on that model to confirm what the Capital Area Regional Plan Commission, CARPC, and Middleton planning staff have input as far as projected long-term area land use as development continues. A big change to that is, of course, the acre farm to the northeast of here. That was purchased by the county and will not be developed now. So that's a change. But to confirm that and just figure out, because at the end of the day, it's in nobody's interest to say, gosh, how do we get 15,000 cars on a 2-lane street? It just doesn't work. You know, and on the flip side, part of the city's long-term goal is to identify a place where people might get to the Beltline other than using Century Avenue, because we want to get some cars off of that if we can. You know, so that's I guess in the broadest possible picture what we're dealing with in context beyond just Bell Farm. Couple of other things. So part of what MPO staff said is using that land use data, they can try to do some sensitivity analysis and figure out, you know, in terms of advice to us, what they think we're looking at in the long term. So even though the feeling is that at least for now, a 2-lane road will meet our needs, what they don't know is, you know, 40 years from now, will we want to do some sort of roadway expansion project? And they want to give us that advice as best they can now, so that consistent with what the city is planning on Parmenter Street, where we want to build a 2-lane road that's convertible to a 4-lane facility later if the need arises. And existing Bellefontaine east of here, which is also built as a 2-lane road, convertible to a 4-lane facility in the future if the need arises. What should we be planning here, you know, based on that? So MPO won't tell us what to do, but they will offer advice to us on what we want to do consistent with our own planning. The existing section of Bellefontaine east of here, of course, was designed, I would say, more like an arterial street, like a Century Avenue kind of street, so that it has that flexibility for expansion. It has very broad curves in like a 1,000-foot radius ballpark. It's got a design speed of, it's actually designed to have a posted speed of 35 miles an hour. But we had suggested a design speed of 35 miles an hour would be appropriate. So even if it's posted at 30, that would meet the need. It's got really wide spacing of intersections planned at 1/4 mile with really limited, what we said at the time was alley access should be really limited. We do have a couple of driveways out onto Bellefontaine, but they might be restricted to right in, right out as that expands in both traffic use and to a 4-lane facility. We would expect that to be restricted in access. So that's maybe a fair summary of kind of where we're at as staff and MPO discussions go. And a big part for me in trying to give good advice to the committee is until I get that MPO projection, I don't know where on that sort of mobility / access spectrum we should be with this road, you know, because I just don't know what its if its intention has changed since it was initially planned in 2006 or 2005, whenever that was. Bruce, you had some talks with MPO staff, and you included those notes of that I've gotten the packet here too, or at least I think it was from you.
Melissa Huggins is the one from our team who had the discussion, and it was in here. Trying to think. I saw it earlier when I was looking at the agenda. Yeah, I think at the end of this document, the specific notes. These were the notes from the conversation, and you know, this, I mean, again, you know, these were the things that were discussed, but by Bill Schaefer, and the you know, I'm hesitant to, like, I don't want to put words in people's mouth or sentiments in people's mouth, but the sentiment was that there was this feeling that they didn't really see Bellefontaine anymore serving that purpose. But again, I don't want to, because they see Case serving it, they might be looking at some alternative things. But that's, you guys are the ones who are going to have to determine that. Like you know, we had the conversation so we could have a better understanding of what the overall thought was. But you know, they basically said it is up to the city, and the city obviously, you know, has their own protocols for how they take in the information from MPO. And so that it is up to the city. And, you know, I'll just put out there that, first of all, I'm grateful for everyone's time tonight, because I know you guys have a lot of projects on your plate, and I know this is complicated and with Bellefontaine, and we don't seem to, you know, it's hard because we haven't made a whole lot of progress. But do you know, Sean, when you expect to get those numbers from MPO?
I didn't get anything specific out of them other than that it's been assigned to one of their planners to run this modeling for us. And I meant to mention too, I don't disagree with any of the statements on here, and I don't think Bill would either.
Right.
It is up in the air. I mean, for the most part, MPO is a regional planning organization, but they don't do our planning for us. They kind of synthesize what each of the communities put in, and they bring it together and say, does this make sense in a holistic purpose or sense? So part of it, I'm sure Bill is approaching from that perspective, like, well, if the city wants to change it to something else, we'll figure out where the traffic will go. But, and part of what he's willing to do for us is model, well, if County K expands, what does that mean to Bellefontaine? You know?
Right. So just from our perspective, you know, as you know, this is one element tying into, so right now we're dancing with lots of different things related to the design in terms of stormwater management and impervious surface and financial feasibility and all the usual suspects that go into any of this stuff. So we're you know, we're continuing to tweak this and trying to go to the end. We're trying to you know, we're trying to take the right path on all these things. And for instance, with stormwater management, we really want to exceed expectations, right? And that with that ties into this in terms of, like, you know, the width of the streets and impervious coverage and all of that, and what's left over once we take into consideration not only the wetland delineation, but the extra 100-foot buffer for Graber Pond. So things are starting to look a little bit different, obviously, than what we first presented. We already presented you guys with one change. Well, one thing we'd like to do is come, if you can make the time at your next meeting, possibly, we'd like to come back one more time because some new information since we submitted these materials has come forth, and we're revising the We're revising the plan to some extent. It shouldn't look like anything shocking, but it's definitely something we would want you guys to see before we submit our application. But we also at that point would like to present our utility plan and maybe talk about some of those connections at Parmenter Street, because those are other question marks that we haven't even gotten to yet, because we've been, you know, talking about Bellefontaine so much. My guess is when we come back and lay that before you, we might still have these same questions, you know, surrounding Bellefontaine, or maybe we would have gotten some information by then that could, you know, help with that part of it. But yeah, we're trying to pull this all together and do it in a way that creates this peaceful, beautiful, sustainable, safe place to live and for the city to enjoy. And there's so many different factors at play with that here.
Exactly. It's one of those things that sounds easy, and then it's hard to imagine how difficult that is.
Well, and
so-
we feel actually pretty, you know, now that, you know, we're feeling pretty good about things, and we hope that what we present to you next is like kind of like solves for a lot of those things. This Bellefontaine question continues to sort of haunt us. You know, it pokes at us because it does, you know, it affects quite a few things.
Right.
But the one other thing that I wanted to share, and I know Bruce might have a question too, but did you have anything you wanted to share on that screen, Sean? The one you're looking at right now?
I didn't. I just prefer pictures.
Okay, yes. So the one picture I'm going to share, because one of the things, can I share my screen, Sean?
Let me try.
And do you know what the process would be too? I know at one point at the last meeting, there was some talk about possibly exploring other options for, you know, the traffic flow, like Graber Road was maybe one of them. And has any progress been made with that, or any exploration of that?
I'm sorry, I was reading at the same time you were.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. During the last meeting, there was some discussion about could some of that maybe anticipated traffic go another route like Graber Road. I know there was just some people were during the last meeting suggesting other possible routes. I guess I don't know what is involved with making that happen. And maybe it's these numbers you need to get back from MPO.
Yeah, I think if Graber went someplace, then maybe yes. Right now, it just sort of dead ends in a field. So if another subdivision takes place south of Misty Valley and Graber connects, depending on the configuration of that connection, it might become an attractive option. Bellefontaine was just planned in context as a really long east-west road, kind of midpoint between K and Century Avenue, to help take some, at least local, regional traffic off of going to those county roads just to go east-west.
Do you know, will in those numbers or in that analysis, will it take into consideration like we're in a whole new reality now in terms of commutes to work and the usual suspect times where the heavy traffic are, yes, they're still going to be heavier, but now, again, with work from home, meetings from home, all of that time into it, I also wonder if that will be taken into consideration.
It is an interesting question, and MPO staff has looked into this pretty deeply.
Okay.
They don't have a good answer for what the future is going to be on this, but they've at least looked at what the very recent past is so that they can do really short-term projections on this kind of thing. They just can't project 40 years out, but what's the new long-term normal?
Right.
And COVID apart, I mean, fuel itself is a pretty big question when you get into stuff like that.
Right.
So.
Right. Okay, I'm going to see if I can share my screen here because this is the last thing that I want to share, and then maybe Bruce, I don't know, am I able to do that yet? I don't see that I'm
It
able
looks like
to.
you're moving the mouse.
Oh, I know.
So try sharing those.
I just can't.
Oh, It won't let you share though. huh?
No, I'm not even seeing
Oh.
the. That's weird.
Don, can you stop sharing your screen?
That might be it.
Oh, let me try that.
There you go. Now I should be. So just for a sneak peek, and we can maybe talk about this more at the next meeting. Let's see here. Do you guys see a map right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so one thing I wanted to point out, and again, once we have the revised plan, which we should have in the next week or so, because we're designing it right now, this pink line here will get, it'll get more interesting and more real in terms of that wonderful connection to the bike path that comes, south of Misty Valley. Then we'll tie all the way up to Parmenter, and you'll be able to zip all the way up to Sauk and Baraboo. And one of the things that we're talking about doing, especially in that last leg where it does connect with Bellefontaine, trying to look at making a 10-foot wide dedicated multi-use path, or so the bikes don't have to be right on the road with everyone. So again, we'll have a much better picture of this at the next meeting, along with everything else. But obviously this is just like one thing we're super excited about, is pulling that bike path all the way through, and making that final connection there. So anyway, that's all I've got. Bruce, do you have anything specific that you wanted to ask?
Well, I think just to give you a kind of a glimpse into where things are kind of going on our end, is that this 66-foot right of way that we're looking at for Bellefontaine, it kind of has a blend of what Sean was talking about earlier with between collectors and maybe local streets, where we're going to try to limit access onto that road, which will improve the mobility a bit. But we don't want to, we don't look at it as a 35-mile-an-hour road, and it's more of a 25 mile an hour is why we designed it, why we used the parameters for the 25-mile-an-hour design speed, because we don't want vehicles coming through, because they're going to be going about 40 or so. We'd rather have them coming through the neighborhood at a comfortable rate or speed, from Misty Valley through some of the because it's going to be we're going to have some commercial in there, so we're going to try to limit access onto that 66-foot right away. We're going to pull some lots on each side with some alleys on the back, or maybe even look at considering one of the 12 cities cross sections to choose from shows a 50-foot right of way with a looks like a 20-foot wide street, which might work out ideal for either side on the back sides of these lots. And there's a street similar to this in Misty Valley that Veridian put in. So I think we understand there's going to be traffic coming through here, but I think, like I said, I think we can blend well within our development using a 66-foot right of way, the standard road width, which is what you're seeing on the upper right hand corner of this figure. But then we as we get towards Parmenter, we're expanding that to 80-foot right away to account for the multi-use path, but then have enough lanes for dedicated, if there needs to be some dedicated turn lanes. So that's kind of the rationale, I think, behind why we moved forward with the 66-foot right away and the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit.
John, what's the right of way at Misty Valley?
Well, that's 125. Which is
I
designed
don't,
for,
unless the I mean, your version of the MPO study basically says it's an urban collector, not a neighborhood collector, as discussed as the developer's note says. I think that's a significant conflict. I think also that the Middleton Comprehensive Plan shows this as an urban collector. Does it not?
it does, and discusses it as the reliever to Century. And so that's,
Right.
as staff, part of what I'm trying to
I
balance here.
don't see how this committee can change what Misty Valley has done until those master plans change. I don't know, I'm confused here. I don't think we can go from 120 or whatever right away down to a 60-foot, 6-foot right away without some sort of change in the total projections. And, I think Middleton's comprehensive plan is going to have to change too. And who does that?
That goes through several committees, but it's largely led by planning staff and ends at the Common Council. And in between, it goes to lots of committees to change a master plan or comprehensive plan.
I think there's a lot of things that got to be done outside this committee with it before we can even discuss this, frankly.
And I would have suggested, these are specifics, and I don't know that I'm into specifics yet, but the number of horizontal curves in here and the degree of the curves is really, really different than what had been planned. Where people would be doing a lot of steering to navigate this street. So it's wonderful for traffic calming. It's harder on mobility. If you're just trying to get people through here, it could get frustrating.
Yeah, we felt like, as I was reading the comprehensive plan, and I totally understand that but as we were reading through the comprehensive plan, I was so encouraged to see that a city was looking forward to traffic calming measures, that they were looking toward reducing impervious surfaces, that they were so forward thinking on all of this. And I felt like we were falling right in line with with all of that, which, and then it ties into all the forward thinking aspects of the development itself in terms of all the different things we'll be doing with geothermal and solar and everything else. So, I mean, I feel like I know what you're saying about the comprehensive plan, but the comprehensive plan also talks a lot about what it wants to do with its streets moving forward.
And I think that's a lot easier to say for residential streets. Everything that's sort of not Bellefontaine or Parmenter, to be narrower and have inherent traffic calming features, to prioritize pedestrians and bicyclists. That is the city's focus now, instead of, hey, let's just build 36-foot wide straight flat streets. That's not our thinking for residential roads. But for collectors, we start to get more into, well, what's our mobility need? And I don't know that need yet. That's what's handcuffing me a little bit in even advising the committee, what should we be looking at?
In our very first, even from our very first, from 2 years ago, conversations with, various city staff and plan commission, the indication was what was that original plan is not something we're interested in any longer, in terms of pulling through those 4 lanes and having it serve that purpose. Like every indication was that things are changing in terms of how, not just in terms of how the city's approaching overall streets, but how we're thinking about Bellefontaine. And I understand that kind of, to your point, Carl, the fact is though that the comprehensive plan got passed, with with this still saying collector. So I do understand the conundrum, but we're also in a conundrum. And I just want to make sure, is that really, really what the city wants, short and long term? Even when you look at Misty Valley, do you really want, when you, those, you know, do you really want that area to have traffic whipping through it? I don't know, go walk Misty Valley, and I think you'll have a whole, you know, and I get that it all ties into regional and, you know, where are we going to go with traffic and all those things, but a lot has also changed recently because of COVID and a brand new way of thinking about the world and travel, and with climate and people really thinking twice about getting in their cars and going somewhere and burning fuel or burning whatever. And so it would be really a shame, in my opinion, if this project doesn't happen because of this. So, I mean, I understand all the technical issues everybody's up against, and but I just wanted to like put it out there, like why this is so like important to us, and you know, why we're pushing for this.
Yeah, I think those are all really good questions and good points. And I think I have some of those same questions. Like, do we want this to be a collector street? And do we have a certain type of design for collector streets? Or can we, you know, I mean, like, is there a standard, like a collector street has to be this much right away, this, you know, not many curves or whatever it is? Like, or can we customize it for location, I guess?
I think the last question is the easiest one. Yes, it can be customized. So as Bruce mentioned, the city picked, I don't know, a dozen, maybe more, typical cross sections years ago. This was in 2006, maybe 2007. And we said, you know, this is sort of the palette of typical cross sections now. We used to have two, and now we've got a lot. But all of those can be modified for good reason, depending on what we want the road to do. So we talk about collector streets, but that's not a thing with very rigid and well-defined standards to it. It in itself is a range of things. So it can be sort of a low-end residential collector. It can be kind of a high-end regional collector. And they're very different roads, but they're both called collectors. This one was envisioned, and it's consistent with overall planning for it to be on the higher end of that collector. So whether one calls it a, you know, sub-arterial or a high-end collector doesn't much matter to me. It matters to me more, what are we asking it to do? Because, you know, and Madison has a bunch of really good examples where they're asking a lot of traffic to go through a road that was not made for it. And it's just a mess. People living there don't like it. The people trying to drive through there don't like it, but there's no good alternative. So I think that's what the city was trying to steer away from. And I have a really hard time then advising the committee to look at something that I think doesn't mesh with the current long-term plan. If the current long-term plan changes, this gets a lot easier, but it hasn't yet.
And to that end, so this is Robert Burke. I'm one of the city alders. I hear what everybody's saying, and I agree with everyone. I think it may be outside of the purview of this committee, but it's not outside of my purview to talk to some others and see what we can do about updating comprehensive plans and the ideas really behind those plans. I did have a chance to talk a little bit with one of the city planners, and they said, in a lot of ways, this collector street idea in this for Bellefontaine is an artifact from planning that was done 10 years ago. And so that's what was incorporated into the comprehensive plan, because the comprehensive plan took a lot of work to put together, and they weren't looking for every little single thing that they could check and double check and tweak and modify and update. So I really do think in at least city planners' minds, the fact that we lost the ability to run this collector street all the way out to Q, at least through the acre property, may change a few things. So that's the positive side of this, Kathleen, right? And Bruce and everyone else, is that I do see that there's still some hope here, because I know you have a timeline. You have to kind of have to make some decisions sooner rather than later, and you want to see, what can be done here. The good news is I think there might be some wiggle room here to actually change what's in the comprehensive plan and change whether this is really intended and desired to be a collector street. With that being said, I can work with city planning staff. They can work with the planning commission. I'm not sure exactly the steps that need to happen. But I will say that I really appreciate your showing this to this committee, and it helps me in my broader view of being on this committee, but also being on the Common Council, to see where you want to go and what changes you've already made to try to make this work. But I kind of agree with Carl too, that our hands are a little bit tied here, that as this is a collector street currently, I don't know that this committee can change that too easily. But I am cautiously optimistic that there is a path forward that gets you most of what you want and would allow this committee to, to make some rulings in the future. I just don't know that we're quite there yet. So I don't know who you're working with on the city planning side of things. I can work with the city planners to try to raise the priority of this amongst their very many high priorities, to say, decisions need to be made here sooner rather than later. And we've got one major roadblock that I'm not sure that it needs to be there, but it is there currently. So let me see what I can do talking with people. I would heavily suggest that whoever you're working with from the city planner side of things, and from you're working with the city planners, and then they bring it to the plan commission. I just think that this needs to be thought about, and probably needs to go back to plan commission or maybe another commission to say, finally, does this really need to be a collector street? Does that really make sense anymore, given that the far east end, where this is supposed to connect up to, I believe it's Highway Q, is no longer an acceptable path, at least as it was currently envisioned. And maybe we can clear away some obstacles. Now, when you clear away some obstacles, sometimes that gives you a few new ones. But let's see what we can do. And I'll do what I can to help from the Common Council side and from my relationships with the city planners, and see if we can move this ball forward, so that, next group you go in front of, whether it's Public Works or if it's more like Plan Commission, we can have a little bit more of a productive meeting, more guidance for you, so that you know what target you're trying to hit.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Sure. And Sean, I do see a hand is raised. Mr. Wakeham?
Brian Wakeham.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
This is Brian Wakeham, 7112 Keneal Trail. I'm in Misty Valley, former board member of the Homeowners Association. And Kathleen, I would recommend that you get in touch with the Misty Valley Homeowners Association. We're really impacted by this Bellefontaine question. It's been sitting there for 10 years. I guarantee that most of the residents on that road do not want to see a collector road at all. And we would definitely support something that is 30 or 35 miles per hour. So you will have about 100+ homes probably in support of that. So I would encourage you to get us on your side and to voice that, and we'd be excited to see some of the plans. So
Okay, thank you so much. I'll reach out.
thank you.
Bye, Brian.
And Robert, I just wanted to say, I think that's a great idea. I support you in
So Sean,
Kathleen's
do we
question.
need some kind of a motion to,
Don? I think that would be helpful, yes. Your voice is cutting out on me. Is mine cutting out on you?
No, I hear you fine, Sean.
Yeah, Don was cutting out for me too, but I can hear you, Sean.
Okay.
I think he's frozen, but I was just going to say I
Yeah.
support Robert in that idea, Robert, that you proposed. I think that's really good because things have changed. So it'd be good to,
Yeah, it has, and this committee has got a little bit of a struggle to move the ball forward, but I do think some other individuals or other committees may have abilities to kind of break through the dam a little bit. So yeah, let me, Kathleen, again, my name is Robert Burke. I'm one of the alders. So you can reach out to me directly. I'm District 2. So my email is, if you've dealt with any of the alders at all, we all have basically the same email, except I'm District 2 versus some other numbers. Otherwise, you know, we'll figure out a way to really get in contact with the right people, which I think to start off with is going to be one or more of the city planners, and we'll see what we can do, because I do think that's probably going to be where we can breach this impasse.
Thank you.
Sure. And then to Don's point, motions.
We need a motion? To table it?
Well, this really came to Public Works as a referral to look into the overall development. And last time we talked about most of the roads, I guess, and a couple of other issues. This time we were talking just about Bellefontaine. So unless there's different direction from the committee than there was in mid-July, which was mostly to talk to MPO staff, try to get a handle on traffic demand modeling. I think we're still in status quo, which is, you know, we have a citywide comprehensive plan. Until that changes, I don't know that the committee really would have solid footing to say, well, we shouldn't follow the comprehensive plan. I do think that there's, you know, potentially good reason to change the comprehensive plan. And then it's, like I said, easier to talk about the rest of this.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that, Sean, and I really appreciate the work you've already done with the MPO. You kind of clarified it in my mind that they're not going to tell the city of Middleton what to do. They'll give some guidance. They'll maybe tell us what the consequences of certain choices might be. But it sounds like a lot of the decisions still need to be made more internal to the city of Middleton, which is good information for me because I haven't worked directly with the MPO before. So it's kind of nice to know where responsibilities lie, I guess. Which is why, you know, I think I'm going to try to talk with city planners next and see where that goes. But I would say from this committee, I wouldn't change our recommendation, which is continue to talk with the MPO group and you know, learn whatever they can provide to us as information, because that's going to be helpful no matter where this goes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the part I was waiting on.
Yeah.
yeah,
So
Sean,
keep
do you
doing it.
need a motion or something to move this down the road, or?
So I don't know that I need a motion. I don't
Okay.
have any clear direction to do anything other than what we've been doing, and I'm
Yeah.
fine with that.
Okay.
Okay, well, if no motions are necessary,
Do we
I guess-
want to move on in the agenda at this point?
move on, I guess.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so next up on the agenda here, we had the Broad Branch, which is the
Broad Branch.
development at
Yep,
the
and number four.
southwest. Oh, sorry, Don.
Yeah, I was having difficulty there for a while. I don't know if it was just me or everyone, but anyway. Item number 3 is the Broad Branch, 2644 Branch Street, traffic impact analysis approval.
Exactly. And I can hear you now, so that's good. You were
Oh,
really
good.
choppy earlier.
Yeah, okay.
So the root issue here is that we have a redevelopment of what used to be the Branch Street Retreat, used to be the coffee shop. There was a taco place in there for a while. But this is at the southwest corner of Century Avenue and Branch Street. And so with rezoning, the recent rezoning, one of the contingencies was a traffic impact analysis, which was on the light end of traffic impact analyses. It didn't find any reason to recommend changes to anything in the plan or on the nearby road network. So it's just at the committee tonight for approval of the report.
Well,
Unless there's a
Again.
reason for change.
no, this is Robert. I read through that report, and like you said, I didn't see anything in there that said, whoa, hold your horses. It looked like it was, like you said, maybe a lighter weight version of a TIA, but it didn't flag any areas of concern. So I would make a motion to approve the traffic impact analysis report.
As Carl, I second the motion.
I have a question, Sean.
Yes.
If this goes ahead, where are the Conservancy users going to park?
Well, the city is looking at building a trailhead on the north side of Century, right across
Then
from
I
the
know,
site.
what time frame are they looking? Will they coordinate together so that can be done in time?
It will not be coordinated. No, this redevelopment is going to be taking place imminently. The city's trailhead onto the north may be several years yet before that's in the ground.
Okay.
So in the meantime, there is on-street parking on Branch Street.
True, true. And all adjoining streets.
There you can park on Columbus and walk, yeah.
Yeah.
If you're out for a walk anyway, enjoy our sidewalks.
Oh, wait, there was a street we're not putting sidewalks on. Oh, never mind. Yeah.
You can walk on the street on Columbus. There's not traffic.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Carl. All right, any further discussion now that I stuck my finger into the pot?
Nothing more here.
Okay, hearing none, all in favor of Robert's motion?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries and is unanimous. Guess we move on to number 4.
Yeah, this one.
Resolution 2021-41-NAPA for 6413 University Avenue, proposed easement encroachment agreement, PC 2602.
Yeah, so Napa Auto Parts is moving in where Sonic Restaurant used to be on University Avenue. And one of the things that they proposed for parking lot lighting is they really need to get from the circuits in their building west of our storm sewer across the parking lot to the east side to get a parking lot light over there. But we don't allow private conductors within or crossing our public easements, mostly because in response to Diggers Hotline, they don't get located or marked, and that's dangerous for whomever is digging. So we just don't do it. Now, they've proposed that in lieu of just not having parking lot lighting over there, they would be willing to effectively parallel MG&E's crossing from their service drop over to the building. They would just follow that same route back and put it in a rigid conduit within a concrete duct with electrical warning tape above it in the trench. So it would be, at the very least, fair warning for anybody digging that there is an electric conductor there. So under those conditions, staff was willing to at least bring it here with a recommendation that it would be okay. If the committee is amenable to that, it's in the form of an easement encroachment agreement that would allow, in specific, that encroachment to be there so that we could at least map it and track it a little bit. So that's the short version of what's there. Now, this afternoon, in an email, the designer came back to me and said, you know, instead of a concrete duct, what if we make that a GFCI circuit so that if anybody dug into it with a backhoe, it would trip and not get anybody electrocuted. And I said, I don't know enough about electricity. All my experience is bad, but I'll ask our electrical inspector. And so we're kind of sitting here in limbo. I said, I'm willing anyway with a rigid conduit encased in concrete with warning tape to recommend in favor of that. I'm not here to recommend in favor of a GFCI just because if somebody replaces that later with a non-GFCI circuit, how would I ever know? You know, and then we would just be dealing with live electricity. And frankly, it might not be malicious. It might just be a future building owner that doesn't know we had this agreement that just says that dang thing keeps tripping all the time. Let me just replace it. And it's just a parking lot light, you know. That's not a bad thing, but it's way beyond my control. So I'm a little leery of that.
So Don, what do
Sean,
you
is
think?
there? Sorry, go ahead, Carl.
Don, being our resident electrical guy, what do you think, Don?
My question was going to be, how big is this circuit? It's like a 30 amp circuit, 40 amp circuit? Do you know, Sean?
That's a good question, and I don't know. I can't imagine why it would be more than 20. It's just like an LED parking lot light bulb. Actually,
one light.
Actually, it's two of them. They're going to do the east side and the south side off that run.
I had a question about the parking lot. So will there be no lighting or will there be already some lighting? Because I feel like how much does the parking lot get full at a Napa auto parts store that we would need the lighting? Like, I kind of feel like maybe it's not needed.
Yeah, I haven't really seen many Napa parking lots routinely full. I would expect that the employees would park sort of at the far end of the lot like this, you know, east over where Scooter's Coffee is. But they have a parking lot light shining just east of here, and that's got to have some spill to the west. But beyond that, yeah, the Napa building is kind of sited at the northwest corner of the site. And then the parking lot wraps around the east and south sides of the building. And that's why they wanted some perimeter parking lot lighting, because they said they just won't get enough foot candles from the building to be able to get all the way across the parking lot. And intuitively, that seems true. You know, in the middle of winter when an employee goes out at 5:30 or whatever, it's going to be a little bit dark. So.
Yeah, I guess like for me, I just think that this is not a great idea, just because if you're thinking about future use, I think I agree with our policy not to do this if it's not marked with Digger's Hotline. I think it's best not to, but unless there was like a really, really strong reason why they needed the extra lighting.
Yeah, I was a little leery too. We offered, I think it was 5 options, one of which was just don't put lights there. And if it's a little dark, it's a little dark. There's going to be some spill from scooters. 2 was, why don't you get into an agreement with scooters to run 2 light heads off of their pole, and you could just give them $10 a month for the electrical that they're going to draw from that thing. They didn't want to do that. That they could put in solar lighting that would just have its own storage right there. I don't know that the technology is perfect right now to run that sort of thing, but it's out there. But of the options that we floated, they really wanted to pursue this. So then we said, well, in that case, put it right next to the MG&E one, because that will get marked, and make sure that if a backhoe hits it, you know, it doesn't kill anybody, it just wrecks your line.
Somebody's gonna hit it. That's the bottom line. But if it's
Yeah.
like a 1/4-inch conduit, they're gonna slap some concrete on it and throw a red tape on it. I don't know if that's gonna protect it. What'll protect it is the MG&E conduit.
That'll help a lot, I think. Yeah.
You know, the GFI solution is ideal. Yeah, it shuts it off right away. But, you know, a 20 amp circuit's gonna go so darn quick with that backhoe. It probably you won't even notice it.
Right.
I like the alternatives you provided, Sean. I think those are some options.
Yeah, so we can just play hardball and say no, and then they have to go to one of those alternatives if they want lighting.
That could also be a recommendation. I'm always, well, no kidding. I have some really bad experience personally, but I've been with enough backhoe operators that also have had really rough days.
Okay, well,
I think I could make a motion to say, I don't know how to say, like, go with the other alternatives.
I think the answer in that case is just, basically no on this, and let them look at their other options, I'd say.
Yeah, do we make a motion, Sean, that just says,
Then I think it would be appropriate, yeah, to make a motion to direct me to go back to the developer instead of referring something to the council.
are
Not
they
to say,
crossing
well,
University Avenue for this, Sean?
I'm sorry, Don, I missed that. What?
Are they crossing University Avenue for this?
They're not. No, their feed from MG&E is on the east side of their lot. And then they have to go back across, MG&E has to cross our storm sewer to get to the building. And then the building panel feeds back across our storm sewer to get to the east side of their lot.
Okay,
But
then,
MG&E wouldn't give them a drop unmetered just to go feed a parking lot light. Because that was a different idea. Because we've done that with a couple really incidental things where we just tell MG&E, look, it's an LED fixture. It's not going to draw any juice at all. Just let's give you $10 a month and call it even and skip the meter. And in a couple of cases, they've done that for us.
okay, well, I think my motion then will be to recommend that staff go back to the developer to propose some other alternatives, and that we would not allow private electric conductors in our utility easement area, or something to that effect, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Okay.
is there a second?
Sure, this is Robert. I could kind of go either way, but let's second this.
All right, just case in point, as an electrical engineer who designed many infrastructure projects, we always threw circuits like this in the ground to find backhoes,
Oh, it's to
to find them, not
find them.
anyway.
Sure.
Yes, to find them, because sure as heck, the backhoe would be there as soon as we got done putting it in. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item
And that
number
was-
5, Sean.
That was all 4 in favor then?
Yes.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so number 5, and Dave Sarbacher, our utility manager, is here in case of questions, but this would be a renewal of a 2-year term for our cross-connection control with HydroCorp. They've been doing it for, I don't even know how many years now, 4 or 5? Dave will know. But this would just be to re-up for another 2 years.
Is this been competitively looked at in the past? I mean,
I think just
is
initially.
there anybody else in the area that does this?
That's a
Not to the same extent of what we've had with HydroCorp, no.
I think initially we farmed it out as wide as we could, but since then we've been mostly looking at level of effort and price just to see if it's consistent. We know we've grown in customer base and number of inspections, and their price has been pretty much consistent as we've gone.
Okay,
So yeah, we haven't looked too much at that.
so this price is a 2-year price. Okay,
Correct.
And Dave, in past years, this is Robert. In past years, is $30,000+ per year. I mean, is this in line, or this isn't a big jump, correct?
That's correct. There are a few more inspections again this coming year.
Right.
That affects the total dollar, just the total dollar amount, but per inspection, it's quite consistent.
Okay. Well, this is Robert again. I'd make a motion to recommend that this committee, acting as the utility board of directors, recommend the finance committee and common council to enter into this 2-year service contract with HydroCorp in an amount not to exceed $69,360.
this is Carl. I second the motion.
And I guess I just got tired of reading, but this is contingent upon satisfaction of the city attorney with any contract forms.
Okay.
Take a
any
breath in the
further-
middle of the sentence.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion made by Robert?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimous.
All right.
And thank you, Dave, for the help on that.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dave.
All right, we need a motion to adjourn. I think we're done.
Yeah.
This is Carrie. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
And this is Robert. I'd be happy to second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that is
All
it.
right.
Don, thanks for leading the meeting today. We
Well, this
appreciate
is
it.
like, vacation for me. I've had 4 young children, 6 and under, with me for the